There are stories whispered in the high places of the world. Stories that frost will not kill. Stories that echo through stone and bone and the hollow spaces between stars. This is one such story. And if you stay with me until the end, you will understand why some legends are born not in victory, but in the ashes of what cruelty destroys. Before we begin, let me ask you this. Have you ever witnessed a king fall? Not by sword, not by siege, but by the weight of his own darkness. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear is not just a tale of vengeance. It is a hymn to the power of rising when the world has buried you alive. Wind screams through the shattered cathedral of exiled. It is the kind of wind that carries ghosts, old prayers frozen mid-utterance, the last breaths of those who knelt before a throne that knew no mercy. And there, at the heart of that ancient hall, beneath vaults of stone that have witnessed 500 winters, sits a throne of blackened oak and iron. Upon it rests a crown of hammered gold, its surface marred with something dark and dried. Blood, some say. Others claim it is simply the stain of time. But the people of exiled know better. They know that crown was forged in cruelty. They know the man who wore it ruled not with wisdom, but with fear sharp enough to slice the moon itself. His name was Alaric von exiled, king, Ulfa, butcher. In the snowbound realm of the high Alps, where peaks pierce clouds and valleys hold secrets older than memory, Alaric's name was spoken in hushed tones, as one might speak of wolves in winter, with respect born of terror. His kingdom stretched across the spine of the mountains, from the frozen passes of Ruthenwald to the dark forests of Obersee. Every village, every clan, every pack bowed before him, not because they loved him, because they feared what would happen if they did not. The stories were legion. How he had executed Lord Caspar Brunnan for the crime of hesitation in battle. How he had burned the temples of the old healers when they dared question his war campaigns. How he had declared himself not just king of wolves, but judge, jury, and executioner of all who walked his lands. Mercy, he once told his council, is the luxury of the weak. I am not weak. And for years none dared prove him wrong. But there was one story that rose above all others. One that the old women whispered by firelight, that the children learned despite their parents' warnings, that even Alaric's most loyal soldiers spoke of when they thought no one was listening. It was the story of the Luna he condemned. Celind of Ruthenwald. Beautiful, they said. Blessed by the moon goddess Lunara herself. A healer whose touch could draw poison from wounds, whose voice could calm the most feral wolf, whose presence brought light to the darkest halls. She was his fated mate, the one the sacred bond had chosen for him, marked by the silver glow that appeared when their eyes first met across the great hall 5 winters past. And he destroyed her. Not with blade, not with poison, but with something far crueler: public condemnation. Exile. The severing of the bond that should have been eternal. The official story was treason, witchcraft, conspiracy against the crown. But those who were there that night, those who watched her stripped of her royal crest in front of the entire court, they remembered something else. They remembered her final words as guards dragged her toward the great doors. One day, Alaric von exiled, the weight of this crown will break you. She had not screamed them. She had not wept them. She had spoken them with the quiet certainty of prophecy, and every soul present had felt the temperature drop, had seen their breath mist in the suddenly frigid air. Alaric had laughed. Cold sound, devoid of humor. The only thing that will break, he had said, is you. But she had not broken. She had simply vanished into the frozen pass, into legend, into the space between what was and what might have been. 5 winters passed. And in those 5 winters, strange things began to happen in exiled. The crops withered despite good soil. The wolves, sacred guardians of the alpine packs, turned rabid, attacking their own. Children were born with marks upon their skin, lunar crescents that the midwives whispered meant the goddess had turned her face away. The sun seemed colder, more distant, as though the heavens themselves had imposed judgment. The courtiers whispered among themselves, though never within earshot of their king. They whispered of curses and prophecies. They whispered of the old words, the ones carved into the foundation stones of the temple Alaric had ordered sealed. When the moon bleeds silver, the lost queen shall rise again. At first, Alaric dismissed such talk as superstition, the ramblings of frightened fools who needed someone to blame for natural hardship. But then came the dreams. Night after night, he would wake in his vast chamber, cold sweat soaking through silk sheets, the echo of her voice still ringing in his ears. Sometimes he dreamed of her eyes, those crystalline blue eyes that had once looked at him with something dangerously close to love. Sometimes he dreamed of the moment he had torn the royal crest from her throat, felt the chain break, watched the silver pendant fall to the marble floor with a sound like a heart stopping. And sometimes, these were the worst dreams. He dreamed of standing before an empty throne while a figure in silver approached from the shadows, wearing a crown of moonlight and stars. He would wake from those dreams unable to breathe, clawing at his own throat as though an invisible hand were crushing his windpipe. His physicians prescribed tonics. His advisors suggested he take a new mate, solidify his bloodline, put the past behind him. Lord Branhamsold, his war advisor, the very man who had first accused Celine of treason, urged him to focus on conquest, on expanding the kingdom, on drowning doubt in the glory of victory. But Alaric knew. Deep in that place where even kings cannot lie to themselves, he knew. Something was coming. The servants noticed it first. How their king would stand at the great windows for hours, staring out at the peaks, at the frozen pass where she had disappeared. How his hand would drift unconsciously to his chest, to the place where the mate bond should have glowed warm and golden, but now sat cold and hollow, a scar on his very soul. "Sire," his chamberlain, old Werner Guggisberg, had dared to say one morning, "the people grow restless. They say the goddess is displeased. Perhaps if you were to make an offering at the temple, to seek forgiveness." Forgiveness. Alaric had turned from the window, and Werner had stepped back instinctively from the look in his eyes. For what, Werner? For being strong when strength was needed. For choosing kingdom over sentiment. "No, sire. Course not. I need no forgiveness. Not from the goddess. Not from anyone." But his voice had lacked conviction, and they both knew it. The seasons turned. Autumn bled into winter, winter into spring, spring into summer, and still the kingdom declined. Still the whispers grew. Still the dreams came. And then, on a night when the moon hung full and heavy in a cloudless sky, a messenger arrived at the gates of Erevold. He was young, barely more than a boy, but he rode a wolf of purest white, a color sacred to the old clans, a color that had not been seen in the kingdom since the healer's temple was closed. He carried no weapon save a sealed letter, and when the guards demanded he state his business, he spoke 4 words that would echo through the halls until sunrise. "The Silver Queen rises." The letter was brought to Alaric immediately. He dismissed his council, his guards, everyone. Alone in his chamber, with only candlelight and shadows for witness, he broke the silver seal. Inside, written in a hand he would have known across any distance, across any span of years, were 13 words. "By the next full moon, justice shall stand before your throne. S. Celine." Alaric's hands trembled as he held the parchment. The paper was fine, finer than any produced in Erevold. The seal was marked with a symbol he had never seen, a crescent moon eclipsing a sun, rendered in silver and gold. She was alive, and she was coming. The Alpha King of Erevold, who had faced down armies and never flinched, who had sentenced hundreds to death without a moment's hesitation, who had built his legend on the foundation of absolute certainty, felt something he had not experienced in years: fear. To understand what comes next, you must first understand what came before. You must know exactly how Alaric von Erevold broke the woman who was meant to be his queen. You must witness the moment that set this entire tragedy into motion. So we turn back the pages. Back 5 winters. Back to a night when snow fell soft as whispers and the great hall of Erevold blazed with torchlight and tension. The trial of Celine of Ruthenwald. Even now, those who were present speak of it with a kind of horror. Not because of what was done, executions and exiles were common enough in those days, but because of who it was done to, and how, and what it revealed about the man who ordered it. The great hall was a marvel of alpine architecture. Vaulted ceilings soared 40 feet overhead, held aloft by columns carved from single pieces of mountain granite. Tapestries depicting the great victories of House Exiled lined the walls. At the far end, elevated on a dais of black marble, sat the throne. And upon the throne sat Alaric, resplendent in the traditional regalia of the Alpha Kings. Dark furs, silver chainmail, and that crown of hammered gold. But all eyes were not on the king that night. They were on the woman who stood in the center of the hall, flanked by guards, her wrists bound with iron. Celind of Ruthenwald. She wore a simple dress of undyed wool. They had stripped her of her royal garments days before, during the initial interrogation. Her dark hair, usually braided with silver thread, hung loose around her shoulders. But even dressed in rags, even bound and accused, she stood with the bearing of a queen. Her chin was raised. Her crystalline eyes met Alaric's without flinching. The mate bond still hummed between them, a constant pull that made every breath an agony. Alaric felt it even now, that golden thread that connected his soul to hers, tugging at him, screaming at him to stop this madness, to go to her to. He crushed the feeling brutally. He had not built an empire by submitting to sentiment. Celind of Ruthenwald, Lord Bran Amsold's voice rang out across the hall. The war advisor stood at the king's right hand, his face arranged in an expression of sorrowful duty. You stand accused of treason against the crown, of practicing forbidden magics, and of conspiracy to overthrow the rightful king. How do you answer these charges? The hall held its breath. Celind looked not at Bran, but at Alaric. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of that vast space, clear and unwavering. I answer that they are lies. Every word. And you, Alaric von Exiled, know they are lies. A ripple of shock passed through the assembled nobility. No one spoke to the king that way. No one dared. Alaric's expression did not change. Do I? Then explain to me, Celind, why Lord Bran discovered this among your belongings. He gestured, and a guard stepped forward, holding a small bundle wrapped in black cloth. When unwrapped, it revealed a collection of items. Dried herbs, carved bones, a knife with symbols etched into its blade, and, most damning, a small portrait of Alaric himself, pierced through the heart with a silver pin. The crowd gasped. Such an effigy was undeniable evidence of dark magic, of ill intent. But Celind merely laughed. It was not a bitter sound, but one of genuine, exhausted amusement. Is this truly what we have become? She asked, still looking only at Alaric. You know those herbs are for healing. You know those bones are prayer tokens blessed by the temple. You know that knife was a gift from my grandmother. And that portrait. She shook her head slowly. I kept it because despite everything, despite the coldness, despite the cruelty, I believed in the man I thought you were. The pin through the heart. That was placed there by whoever discovered these items, I would wager. Her eyes flicked briefly to Lord Bran, then back to Alaric. The king leaned forward slightly. Are you accusing my war advisor of deception? I am accusing whoever fears what I represent, Celind said calmly. There are those in this court who find my influence inconvenient. Those who prefer their king to rule with an iron fist rather than listen to counsel of mercy. Those who profit from war and would see any voice of peace silenced. Another ripple through the crowd. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Lord Bran's face darkened. This is absurd. I have served House Exiled for 30 years. I have bled for this kingdom. And you dare. Enough. Alaric's single word cut through the rising din like a blade. Silence fell immediately. He stood then, descending from the throne with measured steps. Each footfall echoed in that crystalline quiet. He approached Celind, stopping just beyond arm's reach, close enough that none but she could hear the slight catch in his breath, the way his hands clenched at his sides. The mate bond screamed at the proximity. Alaric felt his wolf clawing at his consciousness, demanding he protect her, claim her, defend her from this mockery of justice. He ignored it, as he had learned to ignore so many things. "You speak of mercy," he said quietly. "But mercy is not what kingdoms are built upon. Strength, order, the willingness to make hard choices. These are the foundations of power. And what of love, Alaric?" Celine's voice dropped to match his, intimate despite the hundreds of ears straining to hear. "What of the bond the goddess herself forged between us? Does that count for nothing?" For just a moment, a heartbeat, a breath, something flickered in Alaric's eyes. Longing. Then it was gone, shuttered behind walls of ice. "The bond is merely biology," he said. "Chemistry. A trick of nature to ensure strong bloodlines. It is not. It does not supersede duty. It does not excuse treason." "Then I am guilty of nothing," Celine said. "Are you?" Alaric studied her face as though looking for something, some sign, some crack. "3 members of my council have sworn they heard you speak against me. 4 servants claim to have seen you meeting in secret with representatives from rival packs. And now this evidence found in your own chambers. Perhaps the bond has blinded me. Perhaps I have been too lenient, too willing to overlook." "You have been blind," Celine interrupted, "but not because of the bond. You have been blind because you surround yourself with wolves who feed you what you want to hear rather than what you need to know. I've counseled you, yes. I've argued with you, yes. 'Cause that is what a true mate does. They stand beside you and tell you when you are wrong. And you believe I am wrong. I believe you are becoming the very thing you once swore to fight against. Tyrant who rules through fear. Your father. Do not speak of my father." Alaric's voice rose for the first time, sharp and dangerous. "My father was weak. He let sentiment cloud his judgment. He trusted too easily, forgave too readily, and he died for it. Assassinated by those he showed mercy to. I will not make his mistakes." "So you make different ones," Celine said softly. "Worse ones." The silence that followed was suffocating. Finally, Alaric turned away from her, addressing the hall. "The evidence is clear. The testimony is consistent. Celine of Ruthenwald, you are hereby found guilty of treason against the crown." The crowd erupted into whispers, gasps, murmurs of shock and approval in equal measure. "However," Alaric continued, his voice carrying over the noise, "in consideration of your previous position, and in respect for what once existed between us, I will not order your execution." Collective exhale. Several nobles nodded approvingly at their king's mercy. "Instead," Alaric said, "you are stripped of all titles, all properties, all rights as a member of this court. You are hereby exiled from the kingdom of Erevald, never to return on pain of death. You will depart at dawn." He gestured to the guards. "Remove her crest." This was the cruelest part. Not the exile itself, but the ritual of removing the royal crest, the symbol of pack, of belonging, of bond. To tear it from Aluna's throat was to declare her severed from everything that defined her. 2 guards approached Celine. She did not resist as one of them reached for the silver pendant at her throat, a crescent moon wreathed in stars, the mark of House Ruthenwald joined with House Erevald. The guard grasped the chain. Pull. The metal did not break easily. It was forged to last lifetimes, blessed by temple priestesses, sealed with oaths spoken under the full moon. The guard pulled harder, and Celine's head jerked forward with the force. Still the chain held. "Break it," Alaric said coldly. The guard pulled with both hands. The chain cut into Celine's neck, drawing blood. She gasped but made no sound of pain. Finally, with a sharp crack that seemed to echo from the very stones, the chain snapped. The crest fell to the marble floor. The sound it made, that small metallic tink as silver struck stone, was the loudest thing in the universe. And in that moment, something broke that was not made of metal. Something far more profound. The mate bond, stretched beyond all tolerance, finally shattered. Alaric staggered as though struck. His hand flew to his chest, where a pain unlike anything he had ever experienced bloomed like ice and fire. He heard himself gasp, saw his vision blur. Across from him, Celine had fallen to her knees, her bound hands pressed to her heart, her face drained of all color. Blood ran from her nose, from the corner of her mouth. The severing of a fated mate bond was not meant to happen. It was a violation of natural law, an affront to the goddess herself. But it was done. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The hall waited, unsure whether to be horrified or triumphant. Then Celine raised her head. Blood still stained her lips, but her eyes blazed with something that made even the hardest warriors take a step back. She spoke, and though her voice was barely above a whisper, every soul present heard it as though she had shouted. One day, Alaric von Irevald, the weight of this crown will break you. Not a curse, not a threat, prophecy. She got to her feet, swaying slightly. The guards moved to support her, but she shrugged them off. I will walk, she said. I will walk out of this hall with my head high, and I will walk out of this kingdom with dignity you could never understand. And when I return, you will not return, Alaric cut her off, his voice ragged. You are exiled. The penalty for breaking exile is death. Celine smiled then. Terrible smile. A smile that promised everything and nothing. We shall see, she said. And then she walked through that hall of whispers and stares, walked past nobles who had once bowed to her, walked past servants who had loved her, walked toward the great doors that led out into the night. She did not look back. At the threshold she paused. Without turning, she spoke one final time. I forgive you, Alaric. Not because you deserve it, but because I will not let your cruelty make me cruel. Remember that. Remember that when the darkness closes in, when your choices bear their bitter fruit, when you finally understand what you have destroyed, remember that I loved you. And remember that you chose this. Then she was gone. The doors closed behind her with a boom that rattled the chandeliers. Alaric stood alone on his dais, surrounded by hundreds of people, and felt more isolated than he ever had in his life. The place where the bond had lived was now a void, cold and aching and wrong. Lord Bran stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing, sire. The hard thing. But the right thing. Alaric said nothing. He was staring at the silver crest on the floor, at the small smear of blood beside it. And for the first time in his life, Alaric von Irevald wondered if he had made a mistake. But pride is a powerful thing. And kings do not admit doubt. So he pushed the feeling down, buried it, locked it away. And in doing so, sealed his fate. The frozen pass of Ruthenwald earned its name honestly. It was a wound carved through the mountains by ancient glaciers, a corridor of ice and stone that climbed nearly 3,000 feet before descending into the eastern valleys. In summer it was merely treacherous. In winter it was a death sentence. This was winter. Celine stumbled through snow that reached her knees, her thin dress offering no protection against wind that cut like knives. Her wrists were still bound. They had removed the chains but left her hands tied with rough hemp, a final insult, a final message. You are nothing now. You have no rights, not even the right to free hands. She had been walking for 3 hours. The guards had escorted her to the edge of Irevald's territory, to the mouth of the pass, then turned back without a word. No supplies, no cloak, no food or water. Exile in Alaric's kingdom was meant to be a slower form of execution. The cold was excruciating. Celine's fingers had gone numb within the first hour. Her feet, wrapped in thin leather boots never designed for deep snow, had followed shortly after. The cut on her neck where the crest's chain had torn free had stopped bleeding, but the wound throbbed with every heartbeat, a constant reminder of what had been severed. But worse than the physical pain was the emptiness. The mate bond had been a part of her for 5 years. A constant presence, a warmth in her chest, a sense of connection to another soul. Even when she and Alaric argued, even when she saw him make decisions that troubled her, the bond had been there, whispering, "This is your other half. This is the one the goddess chose. This is forever." Now there was only absence. A hollow space where something essential had lived. Every breath felt incomplete, as though she were missing half her lungs. Celine fell. The snow welcomed her like a bed, soft and almost warm. How strange, she thought distantly. She had heard that freezing to death was peaceful. That after the initial pain, there came a drowsiness, a comfort. Perhaps this was it. Perhaps she should simply stay here, let the snow cover her, let the mountain take her. It would be easier. No more pain. No more emptiness. No more having to face a world where everything she had believed in had been revealed as a lie. She closed her eyes and heard her grandmother's voice. Grandmother Hildy of Ruthenwald, dead these 10 years, but alive in memory. A woman who had lived through 2 wars, who had buried 3 children to plague, who had survived when survival itself seemed impossible. Celine, child, the memory voice said, falling is allowed. Staying fallen is not. Celine opened her eyes. Snowflakes kissed her cheeks. Above her, the sky was the particular shade of gray that promised more snow, heavier snow. If she stayed here, she would be buried by morning. Forgotten. A cautionary tale told to children. This is what happens when you challenge the king. Rage bloomed in her chest. Small at first like a candle flame. Then growing. Well, she would not give Alaric that satisfaction. She would not let him erase her. She would not let this be the end of her story. With effort that made her cry out, Celine pushed herself to her hands and knees. The world spun. She breathed through the dizziness, focusing on the simple mechanics of movement. Knees, feet, hand. She stood. The path stretched ahead, impossibly long, impossibly steep. She could not survive it. Not in her condition, not without supplies, not without. A wolf howled. Close. Too close. Celine's head snapped up. There, on a ridge perhaps 50 feet above the trail, a shape moved against the snow. Large, gray-furred, eyes that reflected light like coins. A wolf of the wild packs. Not one of the kingdom wolves, bound to humans through ancient pacts. True wild one. They did not usually attack humans. Usually. But a lone figure in winter, weak and stumbling. That was prey. Another howl answered the first. Then another. 3 of them at least. Celine's hands were still bound. She had no weapon. She could barely walk. The first wolf began to descend the ridge, picking its way down with practiced ease. This was how it would end, then. Not frozen but torn apart. There was poetry in that, perhaps. The Luna who had healed so many wolves, killed by wolves. Celine almost laughed. But then something strange happened. The moonlight, which had been obscured by clouds, broke through. A single shaft of silver illumination speared down from the heavens, striking the snow around Celine, making it glow like captured starlight. And she felt warmth. Not physical warmth. Something deeper. Something that came from that hollow place in her chest, from the space where the bond had been severed. Presence. Ancient. Feminine. The wolf stopped its descent. Its head cocked, ears forward, as though hearing something Celine could not. Then it bowed. Actually bowed, lowering its front legs, pressing its muzzle to the snow. The other wolves appeared on the ridge, and they too bowed. Celine felt tears freeze on her cheeks. She knew this presence. Every healer knew it, though few were blessed enough to feel it directly. Lenora, the moon goddess herself. A voice that was not a voice spoke in her mind. Words without sound, knowledge without speech. You are not forgotten, daughter. You are not forsaken. What was taken shall be reclaimed. What was broken shall be reforged. But first you must walk. Walk, Celine of Ruthenwald. Walk until you reach the valley where my children wait. Walk until you find the ones who remember the old ways. Walk until you become what you were always meant to be. The presence faded like morning mist. The moonlight remained. And the wolves, they rose from their bows and began to walk ahead of Celine, looking back as though to say, "Follow us." So she did. To walk. One step, then another, then another. The wolves led her not up the main pass, but along a smaller trail that branched off to the south. A path she never would have seen without their guidance. The wind seemed less fierce here, the snow less deep. She walked for hours. Days perhaps. Time lost meaning. There was only movement, only the steady rhythm of breath and footfall, only the gray shapes of the wolves ahead, always just within sight. Her body should have failed. The cold should have killed her. But the moonlight followed, that silver radiance that seemed to hold back the worst of the elements. And slowly, impossibly, Celine felt something growing in that empty space in her chest. Not the mate bond. Something different. Something that belonged to her alone. Power. Purpose. Will. She walked through a night and a day and another night. The wolves never left her. And on the dawn of the third day, when Celine crested a ridge and saw what lay beyond, she fell to her knees again, not in defeat this time but in wonder. A valley spread below her, hidden from the main pass, invisible to anyone who did not know exactly where to look. Green despite the surrounding winter, warmed by hot springs that sent steam curling into the cold air. And there, nestled against the valley walls, a village of stone houses with smoke rising from their chimneys. The wolves howled, a sound of triumph, of arrival, of homecoming. And from the village, figures emerged. Men and women in simple clothes, but carrying themselves with dignity, with strength. They looked up at the ridge, at Celine silhouetted against the dawn sky. One figure separated from the others, beginning the climb toward her. An old man, his beard silver, his eyes sharp despite his years. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who had walked these mountains his entire life. When he reached Celine, he stopped a respectful distance away and bowed. Deeply. The bow one gives to a queen. Lady Celine of Ruthenwald, he said. His voice accented with the old dialect of the eastern clans. We have been waiting for you. I am Elder Thane of Obersea. Welcome to the Eclipsed clan. Welcome home. Celine tried to speak, but her voice failed. She had not used it in 3 days. Elder Thane stepped forward, produced a knife, and with quick, efficient movements, cut the bonds on her wrists. Come, he said gently. You are safe now. You are among those who remember what the kingdom has forgotten. You are among those who still follow the goddess's path. And you, Lady Celine, are the one we have been waiting for. I don't understand, Celine managed. Elder Thane smiled. You will. But first warmth, food, rest. Then we will speak of prophecies and destiny and the role you are meant to play. I have no role, Celine whispered. I am nothing. I am no one. You are wrong, said another voice. A woman's voice, clear and strong. Celine looked past Elder Thane to see a woman climbing the trail. She was perhaps 40, with dark hair shot through with silver. Her eyes the pale blue of glacier ice. She wore a robe marked with lunar symbols, a priestess of the old order. You are Celine of Ruthenwald, the priestess said, reaching the ridge. Healer blessed by Lunara, former Luna of Irevald, and the subject of our most ancient prophecy. For 500 years, we have passed down the words spoken by the first oracle. Would you like to hear them? Celine could only nod. The priestess stepped forward and placed her hands on Celine's shoulders. When she spoke, her voice took on a quality that suggested the words were not quite her own. When the Sun King rises to glory's peak, when cruelty wears the crown of gold, the moon shall fall beyond the mountain's keep, and there the final prophecy unfold. The banished moon will eclipse the Sun King bright, the lost shall rise while the mighty fall, from darkness forged comes righteous light, and mercy's hand shall judge them all. Silence. The words hung in the cold air like visible things. Elder Thane spoke quietly. For 5 centuries we have waited, watching, preparing. We are the Eclipsed clan, the descendants of those who refused to follow the path of cruelty, who were exiled from the main kingdom long ago. We kept the old ways alive, the healing arts, the goddess's teachings, prophecy. And we have been waiting for you, Celine. The banished moon. The lost Luna. The one who will eclipse the Sun King. I don't want revenge, Celine said. I don't want to. This is not about revenge, the priestess interrupted. This is about balance. About justice. About restoring what has been broken. The kingdom is dying, Celind. You felt it even before you were exiled. The land rejects a ruler who has turned his back on the goddess's mercy. And it will continue to die until balance is restored. Then let him suffer, Celind said bitterly. Let Alaric reap what he has sown. It is not only him who suffers, Elder Thane said gently. It is the people. The innocent. The children who starve when crops fail. The families torn apart by madness and war. Would you let them suffer for one man's pride? Celind closed her eyes. She knew he was right. Whatever Alaric had done to her, the people of Erevold did not deserve to pay for his sins. What would you have me do? She asked. Train, said the priestess. Heal. Grow strong. Learn the ways of power that do not rely on fear. Gather those who remember mercy. And when the time is right, when the goddess's signs align, return to Erevold not as a supplicant, but as a queen in your own right. I am no warrior, Celind protested. No, Elder Thane agreed. You are something far more powerful. You are a healer who has been wounded. A heart that has learned both love and loss. A soul tempered by suffering but not broken by it. These things make you not weaker but stronger. And we will teach you the rest. The wolves, which had been sitting patiently throughout this exchange, suddenly stood as one. They turned to face Celind, their eyes glowing in the early light. And then they did something extraordinary. They shifted. Not into humans, these were wild wolves, not shifters. But they changed. Grew more solid, more present, more real. And in that moment Celind understood. They were not merely wolves. They were emissaries. Guardians sent by the goddess herself. One of them, the largest, the grey one who had first found her, padded forward. It sat before Celind and bowed its head. The priestess smiled. They have chosen you. As the goddess has chosen you. As we have chosen you. The question now, Celind of Ruthenwald, is whether you choose yourself. Celind looked at the faces surrounding her. Elder Thane with his kind eyes. The priestess with her knowing smile. The wolves with their patient, ancient gazes. And beyond them, the valley, green and living and warm despite the winter all around. She thought of Alaric, sitting on his throne of iron and ice. She thought of his words. The bond is merely biology. She thought of her own words. I forgive you. And she thought of the hollow space in her chest, where something new was growing. Something that belonged to her alone. Something forged not in the fires of someone else's choosing, but in the crucible of her own suffering and survival. I choose myself, she said. The words fell like thunder in that quiet valley. Then come, Elder Thane said, offering his hand. Come and begin your transformation. For you are no longer just Celind of Ruthenwald. You are becoming something greater. You are becoming the Silver Queen. Celind took his hand. And as they descended into the valley together, the wolves following, the priestess chanting blessings, Celind felt the first stirrings of what she would become. Not a victim. Not a discarded mate. Not a broken, exiled Luna. But a queen in her own right. Force of nature. A reckoning waiting to be born. The journey had only just begun. 5 winters later. The throne room of Erevold had not changed. The same vaulted ceilings. The same granite columns. The same tapestries depicting glorious victories. But everything else had. King Alaric von Erevold sat upon his throne in the grey light of a winter afternoon, and to any who looked closely, it was clear that the king was not the man he had once been. He was still imposing. Still powerful in build, with shoulders broad enough to bear a kingdom's weight. But there was a hollowness to his eyes now, a gauntness to his cheeks that spoke of sleepless nights and meals forgotten. His crown sat slightly crooked, as though he had placed it carelessly and lacked the will to adjust it. Lord Bran Amsold stood at his usual place at the king's right hand, but even he had begun to show signs of concern. His master had become unpredictable. given to long silences, prone to staring out windows at mountains no one else seemed interested in. "Sire," Bran said carefully, "the representatives from the Unterwald clans are waiting. They wish to discuss the grain shortages." Alaric did not respond immediately. He was looking at his hands, turning them over as though seeing them for the first time. "Sire," Bran tried again. "Tell me, Bran," Alaric said slowly, "do you believe in curses?" Bran blinked. What? Curses. Divine punishment. The idea that the goddess herself might turn against a man for his choices. "I believe in cause and effect, sire. We are experiencing difficult harvests due to unusual weather patterns. The wolf madness is likely a disease spreading through the packs. These things have natural explanations." "Natural," Alaric repeated. He laughed, a sound without humor. "Yes, course. Natural." But he did not sound convinced. The truth was that the kingdom's decline had accelerated beyond anything that could be called natural. In the 5 winters since Selene's exile, Irevold had transformed from a prosperous realm into something approaching a nightmare. The crops failed year after year, despite the best efforts of farmers who had never seen such strange blights. The grain turned black in the fields. The vegetables rotted before harvest. Even the livestock suffered, producing less milk, birthing fewer young, growing sickly and weak. The wolves, the sacred protectors of the alpine packs, had begun to lose their minds. Once loyal companions, they now turned on their human partners with terrifying frequency. Some had to be put down. Others fled into the mountains and were never seen again. The packs, which had been the pride of Irevold, were fractured and afraid. And the people whispered. They whispered in markets and taverns, in fields and homes. They whispered that the goddess had cursed them, that their king had committed a sin so profound that the land itself rejected his rule. They whispered about the Luna who had been exiled. At first, Alaric had ordered such talk suppressed. But you cannot arrest whispers. You cannot imprison rumors. The more he tried to silence the discontent, the louder it grew. And then there were the signs. Children born with lunar crescents marked on their skin, 12 in the first year, 30 in the second, now too many to count. The priests claimed these marks meant the goddess's favor, but the old women knew better. These were signs of divine displeasure. Springs running dry. Birds falling dead from the sky for no reason. A blood-red aurora that had appeared in the northern sky last winter and refused to fade for 3 weeks. "The representatives, sire," Bran prompted again. "Shall I send them in?" "No," Alaric said abruptly. "Send them away. I will not see them today." "But sire, they have traveled for." "I said no." Alaric's voice rose, sharp and sudden. Several courtiers flinched. Bran bowed stiffly. "As you wish, sire." After he left to dismiss the delegates, Alaric slumped back in his throne. The crown seemed heavier today. Everything seemed heavier. The dreams had become worse. Now they came not just at night, but during the day, waking visions that left him unsure what was real. He would be in a council meeting and suddenly see her, Selene, standing in the corner, blood running from her nose, that terrible smile on her lips. He would blink and she would be gone. Or he would be eating and taste ashes instead of food. Or he would wake in the middle of the night, certain he could still feel the mate bond, that golden thread, but when he reached for it, there was only that awful emptiness. His physicians were useless. They prescribed rest, better food, less stress. As though the problem were physical. The priests were worse. They suggested offerings to the goddess, pilgrimages to holy sites, acts of penance. But when Alaric had finally, in desperation, visited the sealed temple, the one where healers had once practiced, he had barely crossed the threshold before being seized by such agonizing pain in his chest that he collapsed. The priests had carried him out, speaking of divine rejection, of a soul too stained for sacred ground. He had not returned. Werner Guggisberg, his old chamberlain, knocked softly at the private entrance to the throne room. "Sire, might I have a word?" Alaric gestured wearily. "Enter, Werner." The old man approached with the careful steps of one who knew his king's moods were volatile. Sire, this may not be welcome, but I feel it must be said. Then say it. Werner took a breath. The people are suffering. The kingdom is dying. And many believe it is connected to what happened 5 years ago. Do not speak of that, Alaric said sharply. Sire, I must. Because if there is any truth to the whispers, if the goddess truly is displeased, then perhaps. Perhaps what? Alaric stood, his voice dangerous. Perhaps I should beg forgiveness for doing what was necessary. For maintaining order. For refusing to let sentiment cloud my judgment. Perhaps, Werner said quietly, you should consider whether it was truly necessary. Or whether pride has cost us all more than you are willing to admit. For a long moment, Alaric stared at his chamberlain. Werner met his gaze steadily, though his hands trembled slightly. Finally Alaric sat down again. She cursed me, he said, so softly Werner had to strain to hear. That last night. She said the weight of this crown would break me. That was no curse, sire. That was a warning. What difference does it make? The difference, Werner said carefully, between a fate you cannot change and a choice you still have time to make right. Alaric laughed bitterly. Make it right. She is gone, Werner. Exiled. Dead most likely. The pass in winter. No one survives that without supplies. Then you have nothing to lose by seeking forgiveness, do you? Before Alaric could respond, the door burst open. Lord Bran strode in, his face flushed, holding a piece of parchment. Sire! This just arrived. You need to see this immediately. Alaric snatched the letter, broke the seal, read. His face went white. What is it? Werner asked. Alaric's hand trembled. Scouts report a force gathering in the Eastern Highlands. A banner they do not recognize. A symbol of a crescent moon eclipsing a sun. Bran leaned forward. The Eastern Highlands. That's where the old exiled clans settled. The eclipsed clan they call themselves. Troublemakers who refuse to abandon the old ways. But they're scattered, disorganized. They've never posed a real threat. The scouts say differently, Alaric said, still reading. They say the clans have united. Under a single leader. Who? Alaric's voice was barely a whisper. They call her the Silver Queen. Silence crashed down like a physical force. Werner spoke first. Could it be? It's impossible, Bran said quickly. Celind of Ruthenwald was exiled 5 years ago. She would not have survived. This is someone else using the title, trying to capitalize on old legends. But Alaric was staring at the letter, at the description the scouts had included. A woman of commanding presence. Dark hair shot through with silver, is like glacial ice. She wears a crown of moonlight and commands wolves as though they were tame dogs. The people call her the Blessed of Lunara. It's her, Alaric said. It's her. Impossible, Bran repeated. Why? Werner asked. Because you assumed the pass would kill her. Because you thought exile was merely delayed execution. Bran rounded on the chamberlain. Watch your tongue, old man. Enough. Alaric stood. Both of you, enough. If it is her. If Celind truly lives. He did not finish the sentence. Did not know how to finish it. Then we crush her, Bran said firmly. We march on the highlands and end this before it begins. Show of force. Quick, decisive. It is what you do best, sire. But Werner shook his head. More violence. More cruelty. Can you not see that this is exactly what has brought us to this point? What would you have us do? Bran demanded. Send her flowers and an apology. Perhaps, Werner said quietly. That is exactly what should happen. Alaric walked to the great windows, the ones that looked out over his kingdom. In the distance, he could see smoke from village fires. But there were fewer fires than there had been 5 years ago. Fewer villages occupied. His kingdom was not just dying. It was already half dead. Sire, Bran said, give the order. Let me gather the armies. We can be at the Highlands within 2 weeks. Alaric said nothing. Sire. Leave me, Alaric said. Both of you. I need to think. Bran looked like he wanted to argue, but Werner placed a hand on his arm. Together they bowed and left. Alone, Alaric pressed his forehead against the cold glass of the window. His breath fogged the pain. Celind, he whispered. What have I done? But the window offered no answer. Only his own reflection, distorted and strange, a ghost of the man he had been. And in that reflection, for just a moment, he saw her, standing behind him. That terrible, knowing smile on her lips. He spun around. The room was empty. But her words echoed in his mind, clear as the day she had spoken them. One day, Alaric von Irevold, the weight of this crown will break you. He touched the crown on his head, felt its weight, its cold metal, its accusing presence. And for the first time, Alaric von Irevold, the Alpha King who had never known fear, began to understand what it meant to be afraid. Not of an enemy at the gates, but of the judgment he had brought upon himself. The Eastern Highlands were a realm unto themselves. Where Irevold was all sharp peaks and severe valleys, the highlands rolled like frozen waves, plateaus of stone covered in hardy grasses that somehow survived even the harshest winters. Hot springs dotted the landscape, creating pockets of warmth where life thrived despite the altitude. And here, in this place forgotten by the main kingdom, Celind had built something extraordinary. Had not been easy. Those first months in the valley of the eclipsed clan had been brutal in their own way. The physical wounds healed quickly under the priestess's care, the cut on her neck, the frostbite, the exhaustion. But the wound in her soul, that empty space where the mate bond had been, that took longer. Elder Thane and the priestess, whose name was Margaret Keller, did not rush her. They understood that healing is not linear, that strength is forged slowly, in the quiet accumulation of days and choices. They taught her the old ways. The healing arts that went beyond simple medicine, songs that could calm fever, touch that could draw poison, prayers that aligned spirit with flesh. They taught her the history of the eclipsed clan, how they had been exiled 3 centuries ago for refusing to support a particularly brutal war, how they had kept the goddess's teachings alive when the main kingdom abandoned them. They taught her to fight. This surprised Celind. She had expected spiritual instruction, political strategy perhaps, but weapons training. A queen must be able to defend herself, Elder Thane had said, handing her a practice staff. And more than that, she must understand the language of power. Those who follow the path of mercy must be capable of strength, or their mercy means nothing. So Celind trained. She learned the staff, the knife, the bow. She learned to move in snow without leaving tracks, to read the mountain's moods, to survive on nothing but what she could hunt or forage. She learned to fight not with the brutal efficiency of a soldier, but with the precise grace of a healer, targeting pressure points, disarming rather than killing, using her opponent's force against them. She grew stronger, leaner, harder, but she never lost her gentleness. That was the paradox Elder Thane wanted her to embody: strength without cruelty, power without pride. You are becoming something your former mate could never understand, Margaret told her one evening as they sat by the hot springs, steam rising around them like spirits. You are learning that true power does not come from making others fear you. It comes from being someone others choose to follow. I don't want followers, Celind had said. Then what do you want? Celind thought for a long time. Justice, she finally said. Not revenge. Justice. For myself, yes. But also for everyone who suffers under a rule built on fear. For the people of Irevold who are paying for Alaric's choices. For the balance that has been broken. Margaret had smiled. Then you are ready for the next step. The next step had been the gathering of the exiled clans. They came slowly at first. Representatives from villages scattered across the highlands, packs who had been driven out of Irevold over the decades for various offenses, refusing to participate in unjust wars, harboring refugees, speaking against the king's cruelty. Each group was small, wary, used to depending only on themselves. But when they saw Celind, something changed. Perhaps it was the way she listened to each group's grievances with genuine attention. Perhaps it was how she could heal their sick with a touch, calm their angry with a word. Perhaps it was the mark that had appeared on her forehead during her training, a crescent moon that glowed silver in certain lights, the unmistakable sign of the goddess's favor. Or perhaps it was simply that they were tired. Tired of hiding. Tired of being scattered. Tired of watching their homeland rot under a king who had forgotten mercy. One by one, they pledged themselves to her cause. The banner of the crescent wolf was created, a silver wolf on a dark blue field, with a crescent moon rising behind it. Not a banner of conquest, but of restoration. And Celind, who had never wanted to be a queen, found herself becoming one anyway. Not through force, through necessity. The crown of Lunara came to her in the 3rd year of her exile. She had climbed to a sacred peak, alone except for the wolf guardians who never left her side. It was the winter solstice, the longest night of the year, and Margaret had told her to seek the goddess's guidance on what should come next. Celind had stood at the summit as snow fell and stars wheeled overhead, and she had prayed. Not for power, not for revenge, but for clarity. Show me what I'm meant to do. Show me if this path is right. Show me if I am strong enough to bear what you ask of me. The aurora had appeared then. Not the normal greens and blues, but silver, pure radiant silver that filled the entire sky. And from that light had descended a crown. Not physical, not at first, but real nonetheless. A crown of starlight and moonbeams, settling on her head with weight that was both terrible and perfect. And with it came knowledge. The certainty that she was not just building an alliance or gathering followers. She was becoming the instrument of divine balance. The counterweight to Alaric's cruelty. The eclipse that would end his long, harsh reign. When she descended from that mountain, everyone who saw her knew something had changed. The crown remained invisible to most eyes, but its presence was undeniable. Authority radiated from her like heat from a forge. The Silver Queen, someone had whispered. The name stuck. By the 5th winter of her exile, Celind commanded an army. Not a large one by Erevold standards, perhaps 2,000 fighters, most of them defensive warriors rather than conquering soldiers. But they were loyal. They were united. And they believed. The villages under her protection thrived. Crops grew where they had failed elsewhere. The wolves regained their sanity and served as willing guardians. Children were born healthy and strong. It was as though the goddess's favor had created a pocket of grace in the midst of the general decay. And people noticed. Refugees from Erevold began to arrive. First a trickle, then a stream. Families fleeing starvation. Soldiers deserting a king they no longer believed in. Healers and priests who could no longer stomach serving a ruler who had turned his back on the goddess. Each one was welcomed. Each one was fed, sheltered, given a place. And each one added their strength to the Silver Queen's cause. Celind stood now on a high plateau, looking west toward Erevold. Her army was camped in the valley below, not preparing for conquest but for justice. They would march soon. The signs were clear. The goddess's timing was perfect. "My queen," said a voice behind her. She turned to see her war council approaching. Not a council of bloodthirsty generals, but of wise leaders. Elder Thane, Priestess Margaret, and 3 others. Conrad Bachman, a former captain in Alaric's army who had defected after being ordered to burn a village for failure to meet grain quotas. Anselm Furrer, a healer who had watched Alaric close the temples and drive the sacred orders into hiding, and Greta Ammon, a blacksmith who had lost her son to the wolf madness and blamed the king's broken covenant with the goddess. "The scouts have returned," Conrad said. "Erevold's defenses are weak. Many of the soldiers are demoralized. Some openly say they would not fight if we marched. They remember you, my queen. They remember what you were before." "Good," Celind said. "Because I do not wish to slaughter them. I wish to free them." "There is more," Margaret said. The message was delivered. Celind nodded. 2 days ago, she had sent envoys to Erevold's court. Not an army, just 3 riders under a flag of truce, carrying a single letter sealed with her crest. The letter had contained 13 words. By the next full moon, justice shall stand before your throne. How did he react? Selinde asked. The scouts say the king went pale, Greta reported. He dismissed his council and spent the night alone in his chambers. There are rumors he has become unstable. Selinde felt a complicated mix of emotions. Pity, anger, sadness, but no satisfaction. Alaric's suffering brought her no joy. Simply was. And Lord Bran, she asked. Urging war, Conrad said. Surprise strike on our position, preemptive attack. But the king has not given the order. He is afraid, Margaret said. Not of our army, of what we represent, of divine judgment. Should he be? Anselm asked quietly. Are we truly instruments of divine will, or are we simply justifying our own desires? It was a fair question, one Selinde asked herself often. I do not know, she said honestly. I know that I did not want this. I wanted a quiet life, healing, raising children, growing old with someone I loved. But that choice was taken from me. And now I must choose what to do with what remains. I choose to try to restore balance, to show that mercy is not weakness, to prove that a kingdom can be ruled without cruelty. Is that divine will or personal desire? Perhaps they are the same thing. Elder Thane smiled. That is the answer of a true queen. When do we march? Greta asked. Selinde looked at the sky. The moon was a waning crescent, almost invisible in the bright afternoon. But in 9 days it would be full. We march in 6 days, she said, so that we arrive with time to spare. I made a promise. I intend to keep it. What if he attacks first? Conrad asked. He won't, Selinde said with certainty. He is paralyzed, caught between pride and guilt, between the king he wants to be and the man he cannot stop himself from becoming. He will wait. He will let us come. Because part of him wants this. Part of him wants to face what he has done. And when we face him, Margaret asked, what then? Selinde closed her eyes. She had thought about this moment for 5 years. Dreamed it, feared it, prepared for it. Then we will see, she said, whether a heart can truly change, or whether some sins are too great to be forgiven. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of snow and pine. The wolf guardians howled, a sound of anticipation. The Silver Queen turned from the western view and descended toward her camp, toward the people who had chosen to follow her, toward the destiny she had not wanted but would no longer refuse. The eclipse was coming, and when it arrived, the Sun King would finally face his reckoning. The city of Erevold had never been this tense. In the market square, merchants traded not just goods but rumors. The Silver Queen was coming with an army of 10,000. No, 20,000. No, she commanded actual demons. She could turn men to stone with a look. She rode a wolf the size of a house. She had died and been resurrected by the goddess herself. The truth was probably less dramatic, but truth held little power against the momentum of legend. Lord Bran Amzold walked through the market in plain clothes, listening. It was his habit to do so. One could not understand the mood of the people by sitting in a palace. And the mood was troubling. I remember Lady Selinde, an old baker was saying to his customer. Kind she was. Healed my daughter when the fever took her. Never asked for payment, just smiled and said it was her duty. And the king exiled her for witchcraft. The only witchcraft she did was making people love her. Hush, the customer said, glancing around nervously. You'll get yourself arrested. For what? Speaking truth. We're all thinking it. The kingdom's cursed. Has been since that night. The night he tore her crest off and sent her into the snow to die. She didn't die though, did she? Said a younger man, a soldier by the look of him. That's what they're saying. She survived. The goddess protected her. My cousin saw her. Another voice joined in. He's a trader, goes to the highlands sometimes. Says she's beautiful as an angel and fierce as a storm. Says she wears a crown of actual moonlight. Says wolves follow her like dogs. Says, Bran muttered under his breath. Everyone says, but no one knows. But that was the problem, wasn't it? In the absence of knowledge, people created their own truth. And the truth they were creating painted Selinde as a messianic figure, and Alaric as a tyrant who had brought divine wrath upon them all. Bran returned to the palace and immediately sought out the king. He found Alaric in his private chambers, staring at a portrait. It was a portrait of Selinde. Bran had thought Alaric had destroyed all images of her after the exile. Apparently not this one. "Sire," Bran said carefully, "we need to talk about the situation." "I can't remember," Alaric said without turning. "Can't remember if her eyes were more blue or more gray. In this painting they look gray. But I remember them being blue. Bright blue. Like ice in sunlight. Why can't I remember?" "Sire, the market is full of talk. People are nervous. We need to address this before it becomes panic." "She wore this dress," Alaric continued as though Bran hadn't spoken, "at the harvest festival. The one before. Before everything. She danced. I remember watching her dance. She was happy. When did she stop being happy? Was it gradual? Or was there a moment, a specific moment when I killed the joy in her?" "Alaric." Bran used his king's name without title, a liberty he rarely took. "You need to focus. An army is marching toward us. We need to prepare." Finally Alaric turned. His eyes were bloodshot, his face haggard. "I don't want to fight her. You may not have a choice. There's always a choice." That's what she used to say. No matter how trapped you feel, there's always a choice. "Then choose," Bran said bluntly. "Choose to be a king. Choose to defend your kingdom. Choose to put aside this melancholy and do what needs to be done." Alaric walked to his window, the same window he spent hours at every day, as though waiting for something to appear on the horizon. "What if she's right?" he asked quietly. "What if the kingdom is cursed because of what I did?" "There is no curse. There are droughts and blights and diseases, yes, but—" "Bran." Alaric's voice was gentle, which somehow made it more terrible. "You know that's not true. You feel it too. The wrongness. The sense that something fundamental is broken." Bran said nothing. Because Alaric was right. He did feel it. They all did. "Why did you do it?" Alaric asked suddenly. "Why did you accuse her? Was it truly because you believed she was a traitor? Or was it because you knew I was becoming someone you could manipulate, and she was in the way?" Bran stiffened. "I served you faithfully. Every decision I made. Every decision you made advanced your own power," Alaric said. "I'm not blind, Bran. Cruel, yes. Blind, no. You whispered in my ear about threats that didn't exist. You showed me evidence that you manufactured. You turned me against the one person who might have saved me from becoming this." He gestured at himself with disgust. "And I let you. That's the worst part. I let you because it was easier than admitting I was afraid. Afraid that if I let myself love her fully, if I let the bond guide me, I would become weak like my father. So I broke it. Broke her. Broke us. And for what?" Bran's hands clenched. "For stability. For strength. For nothing." Alaric's shout echoed off the chamber walls. "Look around, Bran. Is this stability? The people starving. The wolves mad. The land itself rejecting us. Have power, yes. Have strength. Have fear. But I have nothing that matters. Nothing that lasts. Nothing that makes the weight of this fucking crown bearable." He tore the crown from his head and hurled it across the room. It struck the wall and clattered to the floor, the sound impossibly loud in the sudden silence. Bran stared at it, then at his king, then back at the crown. "Pick it up," he said. "No. Pick it up. You are the king. You. I am a man who destroyed the best thing in his life because I was too proud and too stupid to see what I had." Alaric's voice broke. Do you know what it's like, Bran? Living with this emptiness. This space where she used to be. It's like breathing with half your lungs. Like seeing with one eye. Everything is diminished. Everything is wrong. And it's my fault. My choice. My sin. Then make it right, came a voice from the doorway. Both men turned to see Werner Guggisberg standing there. His old face lined with sorrow. I knocked, Werner said. No one answered. But I heard shouting and thought I should intervene before guards came running. Leave us, Werner, Bran said. No, Alaric countered. Faye, please. You've been with me longer than anyone. Tell me, is there a way to make this right? Werner entered slowly, closing the door behind him. He looked at the crown on the floor, at Alaric's ravaged face, at Bran's furious expression. There might be, Werner said carefully. But it would require something you have spent 5 years refusing to do. What? Humble yourself. Admit you were wrong. Ask for forgiveness. From whom? Alaric asked. The goddess. Tried. I cannot enter the temple without collapsing in pain. Not from the goddess, Werner said. From her. From Celind. When she arrives, if she arrives, you need to face her not as a king, not as an enemy, but as a man who knows he has sinned and seeks to make amends. Bran exploded. This is madness. She comes with an army. She threatens our kingdom. And you want him to grovel. I want him, Werner said steadily, to do what should have been done 5 years ago. Tell the truth. Accept responsibility. And let justice be done, whatever form it takes. She'll kill him, Bran said. Perhaps, Werner agreed. But I don't think so. The Celind I knew, the one who healed the sick and comforted the dying, who spoke always of mercy and balance, that woman is not coming here for vengeance. She's coming for something else. What? Alaric asked. Restoration, Werner said. Of balance. Of justice. Of the bond between ruler and goddess. Between king and kingdom. She's coming to give you a choice, sire. The same choice she says you always have. To continue on the path of cruelty. Or to choose differently. Alaric sank into a chair. His head in his hands. What if it's too late? What if some things cannot be fixed? Perhaps they can't, Werner said gently. But that doesn't mean we don't try. A knock at the door. A guard entered, bowing. Sire, the scouts report the Silver Queen's army is 6 days away. They are moving slowly, making camp each night rather than pushing hard. It's as though they want us to be ready. Alaric looked up. How many? 2,000, sire. Maybe less. That's all. Bran frowned. We have 5,000 men under arms in the capital alone. Why would she march with such a small force unless she's not coming to conquer, Werner finished. She's coming to confront. Alaric stood. He walked to where the crown lay and picked it up, turning it over in his hands. The gold seemed tarnished now, dull despite the polishing it received daily. Gather the council, he said finally. All of them. I want to address them before she arrives. And I want the truth spoken. All of it. Including mine. Sire, I advise against. Bran began. I don't care what you advise, Alaric said. For once in 5 years I'm going to make a choice based not on fear or pride, but on what's right. Or at least what might be right. I don't know anymore, Bran. I don't know anything except that I'm tired. So tired of being this person. So tired of carrying this weight alone. He placed the crown back on his head, but it sat differently now. Not as a symbol of power but as what it truly was, a burden. 6 days, he said. 6 days until justice stands before my throne. And when it does, I will face it. Not as the king I tried to be, but as the man I actually am. He looked at Werner. Pray for me, old friend. Pray that it's not too late. Werner bowed his head. I've been praying for 5 years, sire. I'll pray for 6 more days. But in the end, prayer is not what will save you. Only truth can do that. The 3 men stood in silence, each contemplating what was coming. Outside, the sun set over Erevold, painting the snow blood-red. And somewhere to the east, the Silver Queen and her army marched steadily westward, patient as the moon, inevitable as the tide. The eclipse had begun. The city walls rose stark against a crimson sky. Blood moon, the old women called it. Nomen. The goddess's eye, red with sorrow and fury, watching as her children marched to war. Selene sat astride her wolf, not riding it like a horse, but moving with it, a partnership rather than dominance. The great white beast's name was Lunwolf, and he had been with her since that first night in the pass. Around them, her army stood ready. 2,000 souls. That was all. Against a capital that housed 10,000, with fortifications that had never been breached in 500 years. But Selene had not come to breach walls. "My queen," Conrad Bachmann rode up beside her. "The forward scouts report the gates are closed but not barred. The guards on the walls look uncertain." "Good," Selene said. "Uncertainty means thinking. And thinking means choice. Should we make camp and wait, or advance to parley range?" Selene looked at the sky. The moon was rising, huge and red and perfect. Full moon. Just as she had promised. "We advance," she said. "To the field before the main gate. There we wait. And if they attack..." "They won't. Not yet. Alaric will want to see me first. Will want to understand what this is before he commits to violence." She hoped that was true. She prayed it was true. The army moved forward in perfect order. Not a battle formation but a processional one. They carried weapons, yes, but held them low, non-threatening. The banner of the crescent wolf flew at the front, silver thread catching the red moonlight. When they reached the field, a cleared space perhaps 200 yards from the main gate, Selene raised her hand. The entire army stopped as one. Then they waited. Silence fell. The kind of silence that comes before something irrevocable. On the walls, guards whispered to each other, pointing. In the city beyond, Selene could sense the fear, the anticipation, the desperate hope that somehow this would end without bloodshed. An hour passed. Then the gates opened. Not fully. Just enough for a single rider to exit. He came alone, unarmed, carrying a white flag. Werner Guggisberg. Selene dismounted and walked forward to meet him, leaving her wolf behind. When they were within speaking distance, Werner dismounted as well and bowed. Deeply. "Lady Selene," he said. "Or should I say, Your Majesty?" "Werner." Selene smiled slightly. "You look older. 5 years will do that. Especially 5 years like these." He straightened. "I come with a message from King Alaric." "I'm listening." "He asks for parley. You, him and 3 advisors each. In the Great Hall. He swears by the goddess that no harm will come to you or your companions." "And do you believe him?" Selene asked. Werner met her eyes. "I believe he is sincere. I also believe he is frightened. Not of your army. Of you. Of what you represent. Of what he must face." "Good. He should be frightened. Not of me, but of himself." "Will you come?" Selene considered. Could be a trap. Alaric could seize her, hold her hostage, force her army to disperse. It was what the old Alaric would have done, the one who ruled through fear and calculation. But something had shifted. She could feel it, that intuition that had been sharpened by 5 years of following the goddess's guidance. "Yes," she said. "I will come. But know this, Werner. I come not to negotiate surrender. I come to deliver judgment." "I understand," Werner said. "And I believe in his heart so does he." They agreed on the details. 1 hour from now. The Great Hall. Selene would bring Elder Thane, Priestess Margaret, and Conrad. Alaric would bring his council. As Werner rode back, Selene returned to her commanders. "You're really going in there?" Greta asked, concerned. "Into his stronghold." "I must," Selene said. This was never about conquest. It was about confrontation. about forcing him to see what he has done, about offering him the choice to change. And if he refuses? Anselm asked. Selene touched the crown on her head, visible now, manifested in physical form, wrought of silver and moonstone. Then the goddess will decide. Not me. She selected her 3 advisors, and together they rode toward the gate. Behind them, the army remained in position, silent and watchful. The gates opened fully this time. The party entered. The city was eerie in its quiet. People lined the streets, but they did not jeer or throw things. They simply watched. Some wept. Many fell to their knees as Selene passed. An old woman called out, "Bless you, lady. Bless you for returning." Selene's heart ached. These people. They had suffered because of a conflict between 2 people who should have loved each other. Whatever happened tonight, she would do everything in her power to end that suffering. The palace loomed ahead. Its familiar halls. Its remembered passages. 5 years ago, she had been dragged out of this place in chains. Now she walked in wearing a crown. The great hall. The doors stood open. Inside, torches blazed in their sconces, casting dancing shadows across those ancient stones. At the far end, on the dais, sat the throne. And upon the throne sat Alaric. He stood as she entered. Their eyes met across the vast space, and Selene felt it. A phantom echo of the bond that had been. A ghost of connection, painful in its absence. He looked terrible. Haunted. Older than 5 years should have made him. But still him. Still the man she had once loved. Her party walked forward, stopping at the center of the hall, the exact spot where she had stood for her trial. The symmetry was not lost on anyone present. Alaric descended from the throne, came down to the floor level, stood before her as an equal, not above her as a king. "Selene," he said. His voice cracked on her name. "Alaric," she replied. "Teddy. You survived. I survived. I hoped you had died quickly. In the past, I told myself it was mercy, that I had spared you the executioner's blade. But that was a lie. I wanted you gone. I wanted the bond silenced. I wanted to be free of anything that made me feel weak." The admission hung in the air. Selene heard gasps from the assembled courtiers. "And did it work?" she asked. "Did my exile make you strong?" Alaric laughed bitterly. "No. Broke me. As you said it would. Every day since, I have felt the absence of you. Every night I dream of that moment when the chain broke. When I severed what should never be severed. And every morning, I wake knowing I destroyed the one thing that mattered." Lord Bran stepped forward. "Sire, you don't need to." "Be silent, Bran," Alaric said. "For 5 years I've listened to you. Your counsel of strength, of ruthlessness, of never showing weakness. And where has it led? To a dying kingdom. To people who fear me but do not love me. To a crown that weighs like a mountain and means nothing." He turned back to Selene. "You came here for judgment. So judge me. Tell me what you see when you look at me now." Selene studied him. Really looked at him. And what she saw was not the cruel tyrant of legend, but a broken man who had lost his way. "I see," she said slowly. "A man who was afraid. Afraid of being hurt as his father was hurt. Afraid of mercy being mistaken for weakness. Afraid of love making him vulnerable. So you chose power over partnership. Fear over faith. And in doing so, you became exactly what you feared, weak. Because true strength is not the absence of vulnerability. It is the courage to be vulnerable anyway." Alaric closed his eyes. "I know. God's help me, I know." "Do you?" Selene's voice sharpened. "Do you truly understand what you did? You didn't just exile me. You told every person in this kingdom that mercy is worthless. That healing is witchcraft. That speaking truth to power is treason. You taught them that might makes right. And now the land itself rejects that teaching. The goddess rejects it. And your people suffer for it." "I know." Alaric's shout echoed. "I know. And I would undo it if I could. I would go back and make different choices. I would. But you can't, Selene said. The past is written. The question is what you do now. Right now. In this moment. Alaric fell to his knees. The entire hall gasped. The Alpha King of Erevald, on his knees before the woman he had exiled. I am sorry, he said, and his voice broke completely. I am so terribly sorry. For what I did to you. For what I did to us. For what I did to this kingdom. You were right. About everything. And I was too proud, too stupid, too afraid to listen. Tears ran down his face. I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just need you to know that I know what I did. That I carry it every day. That if I could trade my life for the chance to undo that night, I would do it without hesitation. Selene stood above him, her face unreadable. The crown on her head blazed with silver light. Stand up, Alaric, she said quietly. He looked up at her, confused. Stand up. This is not about you groveling. This is about you choosing. So stand. And choose. Slowly, Alaric got to his feet. The kingdom is dying, Selene said. You know it. I know it. Everyone here knows it. The only question is whether it can be saved. And the answer to that question depends on you. What do you want me to do? Alaric asked. Selene removed the crown from her head, held it in her hands. The moonstone glowed softly, casting blue-white light across her features. I want you, she said, to do what should have been done 5 years ago. I want you to choose mercy over cruelty, balance over domination, partnership over pride. And I want you to prove it. How? Abdicate, Selene said simply. The hall erupted. Voices shouting, nobles protesting, guards moving nervously. Silence. Margaret's voice cut through the chaos, amplified by divine power. Instant quiet fell. Selene continued as though there had been no interruption. Abdicate your absolute rule. Share power. Create a council that includes healers, priests, commoners, not just war advisors and nobles. Reopen the temples. Restore the healing orders. And swear before the goddess, that you will rule not through fear, but through justice tempered with mercy. And if I do this, Alaric asked, if I change everything, remake my rule, share my power, what then? Selene held up the crown of Lunara. Then this crown, which represents the goddess's favor, and your crown, which represents earthly power, will be joined. Not through the mate bond that is severed perhaps forever, but through covenant, a sacred promise between king and goddess, witnessed by your people. You will rule, but you will rule rightly. Or not at all. And you? Alaric's voice dropped. What is your place in this? I will be what I was always meant to be, Selene said. The balance. The voice of mercy in your court. The representative of those who have no voice. Your Luna, not in the romantic sense but in the true sense. The moon to your sun. Different but equal. Separate but together. Can that work? Alaric asked. After everything. I don't know, Selene said honestly. But it's the only way forward that doesn't end in more blood, more suffering, more curse. So the question is not whether it can work. The question is whether you are brave enough to try. Alaric stood silent for a long moment. Every eye in that hall was on him. Finally he spoke. Lord Bran. Bran stepped forward, his face wary. You are dismissed from my service, Alaric said. Not in punishment, but because I need counselors who will guide me toward balance, not toward cruelty. You served my worst impulses too well. For that I must take responsibility. But I release you from your oath. Bran's face went red. Sire, you cannot. I can. And I have. Go in peace, Bran. But go. Guards escorted the sputtering war advisor from the hall. Alaric turned to his remaining council. Any others who cannot serve a king who chooses mercy over might may leave now with no punishment. 3 nobles left. The rest remained, looking uncertain but willing. Then Alaric removed his crown, walked to Selene, and knelt again, but this time it was different. This was not the kneel of defeat, but of covenant. I, Alaric von Irevald, Alpha King of these lands, do hereby swear before the goddess Lunara, before my people, and before Selind of Ruthenwald, that I will rule henceforth with justice and mercy. I will share my power with those who seek balance. I will reopen the temples and restore the sacred orders. I will govern not as a tyrant, but as a servant of the greater good. And should I break this oath, may the crown itself reject me. He held up his crown. Selind held up hers. The two crowns began to glow, gold and silver, sun and moon. They rose from their hands, levitating in the air between them, and began to orbit each other, faster and faster, until they blurred into a single circle of light. Then they separated, settling back into waiting hands. But they were changed. Alaric's crown now bore a silver crescent on its band. Selind's crown bore a golden sun. Linked, but distinct. Alaric placed his crown back on his head. Selind did the same. "It is done," Margaret said, her voice full of awe. "The covenant is sealed. The balance is restored." The sensation was immediate. The air in the hall, which had felt heavy and oppressive, suddenly lightened. Outside, people gasped as they felt it too. A lifting, a release, as though some great weight had been removed from the world itself. The curse was breaking. Alaric looked at Selind. "What happens now?" "Now," she said, "we rebuild. Together. Not as mates, that bond is broken and perhaps cannot be repaired. But as partners in governance. As symbols of what this kingdom can be when strength and mercy work as one. Can you forgive me?" he asked softly. "Ever?" Selind was quiet for a long time. "I forgave you the night you exiled me," she finally said. "But forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. Is not the same as trust restored. Those things take time. Perhaps a lifetime. Perhaps more. Then I will spend however long it takes," Alaric said. "Earning back what I destroyed. Not because I expect success, but because it's the right thing to do." Selind nodded. "That is a beginning." She turned to face the assembled court. "People of Irevald, the age of cruelty is ended. The age of balance begins. Go forth and spread the word. Your king has chosen mercy. The goddess's favor returns. The land shall heal. And any who serve the old ways of fear and domination will find no place here. But those who serve justice, mercy, and truth shall be welcomed with open arms." A cheer rose. Tentative at first, then growing, swelling until it shook the very stones. Outside, Selind's army heard the cheer and took up the cry. The people of the city joined them. The sound rolled across the kingdom like thunder, like a wave, like the breaking of a dam long holding back hope. Selind looked at Alaric. He looked at her. And in that moment, while there was no romantic love, no mate bond, no easy resolution, there was something else. Understanding. Respect. The beginning of a partnership forged not in passion but in purpose. "It's not a happy ending," Alaric said. "No," Selind agreed. "But it's an ending that doesn't require more death. And that's something." "My queen," Elder Thane said quietly. "The people want to see you. Both of you. Together." So they walked out onto the balcony. The same balcony where kings had addressed their subjects for 500 years. But this time there were two crowns. Two rulers. Sun and moon. Separate but together. The crowd below roared its approval. And high above, the blood-red moon began to fade, returning to its normal silver glow. The eclipse was complete. But nothing is ever truly simple. Not when human hearts are involved. The covenant had been made. The kingdom had witnessed it. The curse was lifting, slowly but visibly. Crops began to recover. The wolves regained their sanity. Children stopped being born with the marks of divine displeasure. Yet there remained one thing unresolved. One wound not yet addressed. The mate bond. It haunted both of them. That hollow space, that phantom limb, that constant reminder of something that should not have been broken. Selind felt it every day. working alongside Alaric to rebuild the kingdom's government, to establish the new council, to restore the temples. All of it was made harder by that absence. They could be civil, could be partners. But there was always that emptiness between them, a gap that no amount of shared purpose could fill. And Alaric struggled even more. Because he knew what he had destroyed, had felt it snap that night 5 years ago. And now, working beside her daily, he was constantly reminded of what could have been. 3 months after the covenant, Margaret came to Celind with a proposal. "There is," she said carefully, "a way to address the bond." "It's severed," Celind said. "Mate bonds don't heal. That's why breaking them is forbidden." "They don't heal naturally," Margaret agreed. "But with divine intervention, with both parties willing, and with a test." "What kind of test?" "A ritual duel. Not to the death, but to truth. You and Alaric would face each other under the full moon in the sacred valley, the place where you were exiled. There, with the goddess as witness, you would fight. Not with intent to kill, but with intent to reveal. Whatever remains between you, love, hate, resentment, forgiveness, the duel would bring it to the surface. And if, at the end, you both choose to restore the bond, the goddess might allow it. And if one of us doesn't choose to restore it, then it remains severed, but at least you both have closure. No more phantom connection. No more wondering what if." Celind considered this. The idea both terrified and compelled her. "Does Alaric know about this?" "I'm telling him next. But I wanted to ask you first. Because you are the injured party. Your choice matters most." Celind closed her eyes. Did she want this? Did she want to risk reopening that wound? But then again, was it truly closed? Or had she simply been pretending it was? "Tell him," she said. "If he's willing, I am." Alaric was willing. So arrangements were made. The ritual duel would take place on the next full moon, exactly 6 months after Celind's return. They rode to the valley separately. Celind with her wolf guardians, Alaric with only Werner for company. The valley was neutral ground now, sacred ground, where the exiled clans and the main kingdom met to trade and talk. But tonight it would be a battleground of a different sort. They met at the valley's center as the moon rose, huge and silver and perfect. Margaret was there to officiate, along with Elder Thane. No one else. This was too intimate for spectators. "The rules are simple," Margaret said. "You fight until one yields, until the moon sets, or until the goddess intervenes. You fight with truth. Any blow struck in dishonesty will bring pain to the striker, not the struck. You fight with intention, to reveal, to understand, to decide. And when it ends, you both must choose. Restore the bond or sever it completely. No more half measures. No more phantom connections." Celind and Alaric faced each other. Both were armed with practice weapons, staves, blunt but capable of bruising. Both wore simple clothes. Both looked nervous. "I don't want to hurt you," Alaric said. "Then don't lie during this fight," Celind replied. "Speak truth, even when it's hard, and you won't hurt me at all." "That's not what I meant." "I know what you meant. But it's what I meant." Margaret raised her hands. "Begin." They circled each other. Neither wanted to make the first move. Finally Celind struck, a testing blow easily blocked. "Why did you do it?" she asked. "Not the excuses. Not the political reasons. Why did you really choose to destroy us?" Alaric parried. Responded with his own strike. A thrust she sidestepped. "Because I was afraid," he said. "My father loved my mother completely. Openly. Without reservation. And when she died he broke. Became weak. Vulnerable. His enemies sensed it and killed him. I watched him die, Celind. I watched him die because love had made him too gentle. And I swore I would never let that happen to me." His staff cracked against hers. The impact sent shivers up her arms. "So you chose to kill love before it killed you," Celind said. She swept low, trying to trip him. He jumped, landed in a roll. "Yes. And I thought I was being strong. I thought I was being smart. You were being a coward, Celine said. Not cruelly, just truthfully. And Alaric, because it was truth, felt no pain from the words. Only recognition. Yes, he agreed. I was. They exchanged a flurry of blows. Faster now. More intense. Not trying to harm but pushing each other, testing each other. Did you ever love me? Celine asked. Truly. Or was it always just the bond? Alaric blocked, ducked, spun. His staff caught her shoulder. Not hard enough to injure, but enough to sting. I loved you, he said. Gods help me, I loved you so much it terrified me. Every time you smiled. Every time you touched my hand. Every time you looked at me like I could be better than I was. I loved you so completely that I knew, if anything happened to you I would not survive it. So I chose to hurt you first. Before you could hurt me. Before you could make me so weak that I couldn't protect myself. Celine absorbed this. It was truth, she could feel it. And it made everything simultaneously better and worse. That's not how love works, she said softly. Then louder, striking hard. Love is not weakness. Love is not vulnerability. Love is choosing to be strong enough to be gentle. To be powerful enough to be kind. You didn't understand that. Her staff connected with his ribs. He grunted, fell back. You're right, he said. I didn't. I don't know how to love without fear. Don't know how to be both strong and soft. That's why I need you. Why I've always needed you. 'Cause you know how to do both. You're the fiercest person I've ever met. And also the most merciful. How do you do that? Celine pressed her advantage, driving him back with a series of strikes that he barely managed to block. By choosing, she said. Every day. Every moment. By deciding that my pain will not make me cruel. That my suffering will not make me bitter. That what was done to me will not define what I do to others. That's the choice, Alaric. That's always been the choice. Then teach me, he shouted, catching her staff with his, locking them together. They stood close now, breath mingling, moon blazing above. Teach me how to choose differently. I'm trying. Every day I'm trying. But I don't know if I can do it without you. You have to be able to do it without me, Celine said. That's the point. I can't be your moral compass. I can't be the thing that keeps you good. You have to choose goodness yourself. For yourself. Not for me. What if I'm not capable of that? Then the bond should stay severed. Because I won't spend my life being responsible for your soul. That's yours to tend. They broke apart. Circled again. Both breathing hard. The moon had reached its zenith. Time was running short. Do you hate me? Alaric asked. No. Why not? After everything I've done, why don't you hate me? Celine stopped moving. Lowered her staff. Because hate is a prison, she said. I spent the first year of my exile hating you. Dreaming of revenge. Imagining all the ways I could make you suffer as I suffered. And it was poison. Dated me. Made me smaller. Meaner. Less than what I was meant to be. So I chose to let it go. Not because you deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved freedom. Alaric stood still. His staff hanging loose in his hands. I want the bond back, he said. I want to undo what I did. I want to feel you again, that connection, that completeness. But I know wanting something doesn't mean I deserve it. No, Celine agreed. It doesn't. So tell me, is there any path where we can try again? Not as we were. I know that's impossible. But as something new. Something forged not in passion but in purpose. Can two people who hurt each other this badly ever find their way back? Celine felt tears on her cheeks. I don't know. But could we try? Would you be willing to try? The moon hung perfectly overhead now. Decision time. Celine looked at Alaric. Really looked at him. This man who had destroyed her. Who had exiled her. Who had tried to bury the best parts of himself and nearly succeeded. But also this man who had knelt before her. Who had chosen covenant. Who was working every day to be better than he was. She thought about mercy. about balance, about the goddess's teachings. And she thought about what she truly wanted. If we restore the bond, she said slowly, it will be different. Not romantic. Not at first. Maybe not ever. It will be a partnership bond. A working bond. Two people bound by purpose rather than passion. And it will require constant effort. Constant choice. Constant communication. There can be no more secrets. No more pride. No more choosing power over partnership. Yes, Alaric said immediately. All of that. Whatever it takes. And you have to understand, I may never love you the way I once did. That woman who looked at you with starlight in her eyes. She died in the pass. I'm what grew from her bones. Harder. Fiercer. Less willing to compromise my values for the sake of peace. Good, Alaric said. I don't want you softer. I want you exactly as you are. Because the woman I exiled would have forgiven me too easily. But the woman before me now. She'll hold me accountable. And I need that. Celine smiled slightly. You're learning. So is that a yes? To trying? Celine looked up at the moon. Felt the presence she had felt that first night in the pass. Vast, ancient, feminine. Lenora. Watching. Waiting. Willing to bless or curse depending on the choice made here. And Celine understood. This was not just about her and Alaric. This was about showing the kingdom what it meant to choose healing over hatred. To choose unity over division. To choose the hard work of restoration over the easy satisfaction of revenge. Yes, she said. We can try. But know this, Alaric, if you ever choose cruelty over mercy again, if you ever let pride dictate your choices again, if you ever value power over partnership again, the bond will break. And next time it will not be me who breaks it. It will be the goddess herself. And there will be no third chance. Understood, Alaric said. One chance. To prove I can change. To prove I'm worthy of partnering with you. Not just me, Celine corrected. Worthy of the crown you wear. Worthy of the kingdom you serve. Worthy of the second chance the goddess is offering. She extended her hand. He took it. And the world blazed with light. The mate bond, thought broken beyond repair, surged back to life. But it was different now. Not the overwhelming, intoxicating passion of before. This was steadier. Hummer. A deep knowing rather than wild feeling. A partnership rather than a possession. Sun and moon. Different but equal. Separate but together. Both gasped at the sensation. Like breathing deeply after years of shallow breaths. Like color returning to a gray world. Like music after silence. It's not the same, Alaric whispered. No, Celine agreed. It's better. 'Cause this time we chose it. Both of us. Consciously. With full knowledge of what it means. They stood hand in hand under the moon. And all around them the valley burst into impossible bloom. Flowers opening in the dead of winter. Grass turning green beneath snow. Springs bubbling with sudden warmth. The land approving. The goddess blessing. Margaret and Elder Thane, watching from the valley's edge, smiled. It is done, Margaret said. The bond is restored. The balance is complete. Sun and moon return to the sky together. And somewhere in the capital, in the temples and homes and markets, people felt it. Felt the shift. Felt the rightness. And they rejoiced. The duel was over. The healing had begun. 3 years later. The throne room had changed considerably. Where once there had been a single throne on a high dais, there were now 2 thrones side by side, on a platform only slightly raised. Together. Where once tapestries of war victories had hung, now there were murals depicting healing, building, growing. Stories of restoration rather than conquest. Where once only nobles and warriors had been allowed entry, now the doors stood open during public sessions, welcoming farmers and merchants and common folk to bring their concerns directly to their rulers. And where once fear had hung thick as smoke, now there was something different. Not perfect contentment, that was impossible. But hope. The sense that things were moving in the right direction. Celine sat in her throne, reviewing reports. Crop yields up for the third year in a row. Wolf attacks down to nearly zero. Birth rates climbing. The kingdom was healing. Beside her, Alaric was in discussion with the new council, a body that included 3 former war advisors, 2 healers, 2 priests, 3 merchant representatives, and 2 commoners elected by their communities. Decisions were slower now, requiring more debate, more compromise. But they were better decisions. More balanced. More just. "My queen," Werner entered, bowing. He was older now, his hair fully white, but his eyes remained sharp. "The delegation from the Ruthenwald clans has arrived. They wish to discuss the trade agreements." "Send them in," Celine said. The Ruthenwald representatives entered. Her own people, from the lands where she had been born. They had been wary at first when Celine returned to power. Uncertain whether she would be vengeful toward those who had not come to her aid during the exile. But she had proven herself different. Had opened borders, reduced tariffs, established fair trade. And slowly, trust had grown. After the meeting concluded successfully, with agreements signed and wine shared, the delegates left, smiling. Alaric came to sit beside Celine. "You handled that well." "We handled it well," she corrected. "You supported me when I needed it." He smiled. It was a real smile now, not the cold expression of the man he had been. 3 years of choosing differently had changed him. He would never be soft, that wasn't his nature. But he was no longer cruel. Had learned to channel his strength toward protection rather than domination. "Do you ever think about that night?" he asked quietly. "The trial?" "Sometimes," Celine admitted. "But less often now. Feels like a different life. Like it happened to different people. In some ways it did. We're not those people anymore. No, we've been remade. By choice. By effort. By constantly deciding to be better than we were." The bond hummed between them. Still there, still present, but comfortable now. A partnership rather than an obsession. They had learned to work together, to balance each other, to be both separate and united. They had not become romantic lovers again. Perhaps they never would. But they had become something else. Partners. Friends. Co-rulers who respected and trusted each other. And that, Celine had learned, was its own kind of love. Not the passionate fire of youth, but the steady warmth of shared purpose. "The delegation from the eclipsed clan arrives tomorrow," Alaric said. "Elder Thane wants to discuss expanding the healing schools. We should support it. The more healers we have, the better." "Agreed. I've already allocated funds." They worked in comfortable silence for a while, handling the mundane business of ruling. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't dramatic. But it was meaningful. Every fair judgment, every wise allocation of resources, every problem solved without violence. These were victories more profound than anyone on a battlefield. As evening fell, they walked together to the balcony. The people of the capital moved through the streets below, going about their lives. Not in fear but in peace. "Do you think," Alaric asked, "that we've done enough? That we've made up for what happened?" Celine considered. "I don't think it's possible to completely make up for some things. Past exists. The harm was done. But we can build something better in the present. We can ensure that the suffering wasn't meaningless. That it taught us something. That it made us capable of creating a kingdom worth the cost. Is this kingdom worth what you paid?" She looked at him. "That's not for me to answer. Ask the healers practicing freely in the temples. Ask the children being born healthy. Ask the wolves running sane through the forests. Ask the people who no longer live in fear. They'll tell you whether it was worth it." Alaric nodded slowly. "Every day I wake up grateful that you came back. Grateful that you chose to restore the bond. Grateful that you didn't give up on the possibility that I could change. Every day I'm glad I made that choice too," Celine said. "Not because it was easy, but because it was right." They stood together, sun and moon, watching night fall over their kingdom. And in that moment, Celine felt something she hadn't felt in 8 years. Not since before the exile, before the trial, before everything fell apart. Contentment. Not happiness, that was too simple a word. But contentment. The sense that she was exactly where she was meant to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. The crown on her head, the crown of Lunara, now fused with her own Luna crest, no longer felt like a burden. Felt like purpose. Like destiny fulfilled not through fate, but through choice. And Alaric's crown, once a symbol of cruelty, had become something different. A symbol of redemption. Of the possibility that even the most broken things could be remade. "Come," Celine said. "We have a dinner with the council. Margaret wants to discuss the new prophecy the oracles have received." "Another prophecy," Alaric groaned. "Can't we have a few decades without prophecies?" Celine laughed. "That's not how the goddess works." "Apparently not." They walked inside together, side by side, neither ahead of the other. Cool. Balanced. As it should be. The kingdom of Erevald had found its way back from the brink. Not quickly. Not easily. But surely. Through the hard work of choosing mercy over cruelty. Justice over revenge. Partnership over domination. And in the years to come, historians would write of this era not as the time of cruelty, but as the time of restoration. When the Alpha King's legendary darkness was eclipsed by the Silver Queen's return. When a kingdom was saved not through conquest, but through the radical choice of forgiveness and balance. Cruelty forged a legend. But mercy forged eternity. 15 years later. The valley was peaceful in the way of places that have known suffering but chosen healing. Celine walked among the silver wolves, her hand trailing through their fur. They were old now. These guardians who had led her through the past so long ago. Lunwolf especially was grey-muzzled, moving slower, but his eyes remained bright. "You've served well, old friend," she murmured to him. "You can rest now." The wolf made a sound that was almost a laugh. "Rest." In his look, "Not yet. Not while you still need guarding." Celine smiled. "I'm safe now. We both know that." A child's laugh echoed across the valley. Celine turned to see them running. A girl of perhaps 8 years, with dark hair and bright eyes that shifted between blue and gray depending on the light. She was chasing butterflies, giggling as they evaded her reaching fingers. Behind her, more sedate, came a boy of 12. Tall for his age, with his father's build but his mother's gentleness. He carried a book under one arm and walked with careful attention, as though the world required observation and respect. Alaric's children. Celine's children. Born not of passionate love, but of deliberate choice. Of deciding that their partnership was strong enough to bring new life into the world. Of wanting to show that people could grow from tragedy into something beautiful. The mate bond had eventually deepened into something more. Not the wild fire of youth, but the steady flame of mature love. They had learned each other, had built trust stone by stone. And 5 years after the bond's restoration, they had finally become lovers again. Not the same as before. Better. Because this time neither was afraid. Neither was performing. They were simply two people who had chosen each other, repeatedly, across years and struggles and the daily work of ruling. "Mother!" The girl ran to Celine, throwing her arms around her waist. "Lunwolf let me ride him. Did you see?" "I saw Hildy," Celine said, using her grandmother's name. "You have a gift with the wolves." "Like you do." "Maybe. But your gift is your own. Not an echo of mine." The boy approached more carefully. "Father sent me to tell you the council meeting is about to start." "Thank you, Casper," Celine said, using Alaric's father's name. A deliberate choice. To honor the man whose death had sent Alaric down his dark path, but also to redeem that name by attaching it to a boy who would grow up knowing mercy as well as strength. "Will you come listen?" Casper asked. "The discussion is about expanding the healing schools to the southern territories." "I should," Celine said. "Your father sometimes needs reminding that not every decision requires extensive debate." Casper smiled. At 12, he already understood his parents' dynamic. Had grown up watching them work together, argue respectfully, compromise gracefully. He would be a good leader someday. Whether as king or healer or something else entirely, that was his choice to make. They walked together back toward the main settlement.